Hi, I just got this book called Heresies and How to Avoid Them, Why It Matters What Christians Believe. It's a fascinating book about heresies and the early church, and how the early church often defined itself over and against others that the church thought was heretical. Now, it's a fascinating book, and I think that you might be interested in reading it. But I think the book kind of falls into a trap that makes me uncomfortable. And that's kind of the trap that the church has gotten itself into quite often in its history, and that is defining itself over and against another. You can see how why it matters what Christians believe can lead us into this rivalry with others. Because if others don't believe the way that we do, well, we might have to cast them out, which is what the church often did in its early history and still today. Because these heresies, these heretical beliefs often manifest themselves today. So how do you get out of this rivalry, this power struggle for what it means to believe the right things? Well, the opposite of heresy is orthodoxy. Orthodoxy has often been interpreted as right belief, as what we believe to be right. But it's not necessarily the case that it has to be that way. It could also mean not what we believe, but how we believe. So, what is the thrust in which we believe? What is guiding us in our beliefs? How do we believe? Well, in the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition, there's this idea of love. You get this in Leviticus, where it says, love your neighbor. You get this in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, where Jesus says, love not just your neighbor, but also your enemies. And he gets this from within his own Jewish tradition. So this is how we believe. There's this not often cited quote from the Gospel of Luke where Jesus says, judge for yourselves what is right. And what he means here is not so much what is right, but how do you judge what is right? What is the thrust that leads you in your interpretation not only of scriptures, but of the world? And Jesus has already given the answer. It's through love. It's not so much what we believe, it's how we believe. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this whole discussion about orthodoxy and heresies is that it leads to this casting out of people who disagree with us on what we believe is right. But I think what's also important is to understand that before God, before one another, we're all at least a little heretical, right? I mean, none of us believe rightly about God. None of us can believe rightly about God. So I think that this element also brings in a humility that's necessary in our discussions, not only among people of our same belief systems, but other belief systems as well. So I'd love to hear what you have to think about this. Let me know. Bye-bye.